Alright guys, so let's get to work. So the first thing I need to do, I want to just make the major modifications to adapting the 1/100 scale Graze and the Haro. So as you can see, I've done a little bit of mix matching parts here with some parts of the regular Graze and the ground type Graze. So I'm going to be using, even though I'm going to make this a space scene, I'm going to be using the ground type feet. I know some people will probably get their panties in a bunch about that, but I just like the look of them more. I'm going to also be using one of the ground type kind of thigh armor parts there, that kind of but there with the extra booster just as a kind of thing there. So it's asymmetrical. I think I'll be using these on the back skirt, but I'm not too sure about that yet. And then for the arms, I'm going to be using custom arms. So one side is going to be big and bulky and probably not holding the bazooka. Actually, it's probably going to be slung back over the back of the arm. But on the other side will have just the regular Graze custom shoulder armor there. Now essentially what we're going to do with our little Haro boy here is make it so that this bottom half, this is the inner frame of the Graze, and I want to keep this like piston detail in this bottom part of this here, so I'm going to need to make that so basically that will fit up into the Haro. So I'm going to have to cut out some bit here at the bottom of the Haro so that that will plug onto there, and then the arms I'll basically just have to make so that they fit onto the side of the Haro here, which I could do really simply or a little bit more complicated, but just due to time I'll probably end up doing it relatively simply just so that it looks good enough and doesn't have to be super functional. I think is kind of the whole deal with this, because it is going to be just a fixed posed thing. And then I will have to make some more modifications to the Haro here, and I'm also planning on making it a kind of open hatch, making the face opened up. Because I want to show off some of that detail in there, and I'm actually planning on having this as a cockpit here in the center as well. So I'm gonna basically just slice this where the mouth is there, kind of mouth of that, so that makes a top and bottom half, and then this whole top half I can have it kind of like tilted up, and then I'll cut out a little bit here because that will actually only cover. Anyway, I need to have this square part there in the center open, and so I need to cut out a little bit here on the bottom half of the front of the face as well to have that folded down so that this actual cockpit here, what I'm going to be using as a cockpit, will actually be an open detail. So anyway, we'll have to chop up that Haro a bit, and I'll worry about putting the arms on later. I think the first thing that I want to do is make this fit with this. So let's figure out how we're going to do that. First thing is just eliminating stuff that I don't need. So there's a few more parts of this I think I can take off that I won't need here. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think this is actually going to be easier than I expected, because I really don't need that whole part of the center of the torso. I just need that for connecting the pistons, but I can just set the pistons in. I can just glue them basically in place. I really don't need anything because they're just going to be going up into the bottom of the Haro, and like the connection really won't be seen. So I'll just glue those in place later. So with that, I will fix that part onto the actual inner part of the Haro here. So what I mean is this part here and this part will basically be fixed together, but in order to do that I will have to cut out some bit of the armor first. So what I would want to do here is just connect this back together enough. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, as I tend to do, the very unscientific way of how much I think I'm going to need to cut out, and then if I need to cut more I can always cut more. But I can see I'm going to need to cut out probably about this much section, but I'm also going to cut out a little bit more because it's supposed to look like it's able to move forward and back, so I need to cut out like a good section here at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is also going to have to trim the edge of these so these won't be perfectly circle as well. So there we go, I've got the just kind of basic shape of what I'm going to end up going with there for cutting out that section there at the bottom. So now I can get a little bit more scientific with that and make the cuts. So I'm going to use some tape so that my lines are straight. So I was hoping to be able to do this with my saw, but I think it's just going to be more accurate to do this with a scriber. So I'm just going to basically scribe it till I got the line deep enough, then I can remove the tape, and then just scribe it the rest of the way until it's just all the way through the part. Basically I'm scribing intentionally all the way through the part as a way to cut it. Again, for all these techniques, there's probably better ways to do it than the way that I'm doing it. feel free to leave any other ideas you guys have down in the comment section. Obviously it's going to be too late for me, but it could be helpful for other people. And then of course once this is actually cut out, I'm sure I'll have to do some work just to kind of reshape it a little bit, just some cleanup work and everything as well. Again, this is just the kind of initial modifications just to get us going, and then of course there's lots of extra work to do after that to get everything looking nice. Okay, and after a little bit of sanding, there you go, you can see the two lines that I've got there. Now I just need to make the little diagonal lines into here, basically doing the same thing, and then we'll just keep scribing that until they're cut out. Right, now what I'm finding is some of these areas, the plastic is quite thick, and especially this back part has this kind of whole bit going on inside there as well. So I'm just switching to, rather than just trying to cut that out using the scriber alone, I'm also employing some heavy duty nippers and knife and file to just get that out and shaped out. So here's the front part. I got that all shaped out there. You can see just that nice front little shape out of that. So we'll, in effect, with the torso on there, you can see now that center section is exposed now. We'll cut out this part here for the back half as well. Okie dokie, so there we go. We got the gap there at the bottom. Now to set this onto there, I'm gonna have to cut away some of this red part there in the center and a bit of this section here. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to need to make that flat, so I'm just gonna draw a line there just straight across that to straighten out the edge of that circle. And after some more cutting and slicing and dicing, there we go. Now we've got the hollow space for this to fit up into, but as you can see, it's just kind of loose. There's nothing really to hold it in there. So I have an idea for a solution for that. It shouldn't really be too difficult. It could just fill it with a whole bunch of epoxy putty and just kind of slam it in there. But I think I'm gonna have a different idea for that. So, well, after a little bit of deliberation, I think what I am actually going to do is something maybe a little bit different. What I'm going to do is just take a little bit of runner here, and if you'll notice, you have the part where it gives you the name of the kit and everything. That's just a nice flat piece of plot plate that you have there, so you can use that. You can just break that off. I have a different piece here from a different kit that I've just already snapped off, and I'll use that, and then I'll use a piece of runner here as a peg. And basically what I'm going to do is just cut this to the right width and just wedge it in there, and then use a piece of peg and drill up through that, and then drill down into this. So then this will basically just be able to plug up into there with a peg that I'm going to set in here with that. So what we need to do first is just set this to the right size, which again we're just going to do relatively simply. I intentionally cut it a little bit long because if it's, I can always cut a little bit more off. So yeah, it's a little bit too long. I'm gonna cut off a little bit more, and we'll keep going until it fits nice and snug. There we go. It actually fits pretty well. So there we go. Even I might not even have to glue that. I'll throw some glue on there in there just in case. But now you can see I've got that just set in place. So I'll just put some glue just so that it doesn't shift back and forth. It could still slide forward and back a little bit. I do want to be kind of right about exactly where it is, about in the center. And then I can just go grab my drill, and I'm just going to look for a sturdy chunk on here. I think I might want to use this bar right there. I got my caliper. I really should just get a digital caliper. It's much easier, but I can just test that and find that it's 3 millimeters in width, and that will match well with this 3 millimeter drill here. So just cut off a section of that. Again, intentionally longer than I think it really needs to be, much longer in this case. I can toss that aside, and I'm not going to need that. I'm also going to need to drill a hole down through the top of this. Now in this case, again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it because I want it to be in the center. So I'm going to just kind of just go straight up from where that ball joint is there at the bottom, and that's going to be kind of like something like that, and then that's going to be about here. My pen, which normally works really well on just about everything here, seems to suddenly not really be wanting to work. Okay, so apparently this pen is done. Luckily I have this big giant marker which will work for our case here anyway. Doesn't have to be, again, too very specific. I'm going to mark it and be more specific with my marking here. Again, before I drill, I just like to put a little mark here. Usually just use the end of my hobby knife, and then I can just kind of see that. And I think that looks center enough, so I'm just going to try to drill straight down to that. Because this is on an angle, I'm actually going to try to make a little bit more of a divot here so that my drill doesn't slip. What I could do is just like file this to make it more of a flat surface on the top there first before drilling down into it. But I think I can make it work. I'll just do one of those, and that's already even kind of broken through. Again, it doesn't have to withstand a giant earthquake or bomb blast or anything. It just has to be able to stand up and be on display and not fall apart. And then once we've got the hole drilled up through there as well, I think I will have to add some reinforcement in this later on, but that's okay for the time being. We can just slide that up into there, and then that should just slide down into here to hold that into place. There we go, like that. It's kind of loose, but again, everything will be more secured later on. Anyway, just the fact that everything fits well enough anyway. And then we can see how that should fit onto there, and there we go. Now we've got a Haro torso on the Graze. I think what I might end up having to do is cutting off that little bit there at the top of this front skirt armor, because it's kind of in the way of that a little bit more than I'd like. So why don't we just do that right now here real quick. Let's pull out the big boy saw and just lop that sucker off. A little bit of knife, file, and sanding stick cleanup, and we're all good. We can put this back together. There you go. That's much better without that little bit there in the front. So anyway, we can always add some more details and everything. I will be adding some more little bits of details and stuff onto this as well later on. So now the next part is going to be adding on the arms. So let's do that in the next episode, shall we?
Thanks for watching. See you next time.